And hello, we are back. I am Zachary Kennedy, and you are listening to Around the Arena. This is our final episode of the year, episode number 8. It's been a pleasure starting this podcast. This is my first podcast I've ever done. I've never had any experience with editing a podcast, recording, talking on a podcast, giving information out, and sports are my passion. So it was a pleasure to be able to spread some of my passion to the Westchester community, and I especially look forward to maybe if somebody in the future can continue this show, whether that be someone in a practicum class at Westchester next year in a communications major, or any other opportunity it will have to continue as we've built somewhat of a brand here at Around the Arena this semester. So the final go, our final decision. In the previous episode, I avoided telling what we were going to cover. And I did say at the beginning of the podcast on episode 1 in the introduction that we were going to stick with spring sports. But the surprise of the final episode is we're going to cover the football team. So I'm sure the football team, as for the media at Westchester, that and the basketball team, and also the baseball team and the soccer teams also, they get a lot of media attention. Football, probably the most so, as it's a big alumni following sport. The alumni love showing out for the football games, and that is clear. And it's just the game that, as for live attendance, it brings in the most people. It just happens to be that way. And that's why I saved it for episode 8. So I did hint at the tennis team, the field hockey team, and the swimming team as well. I did hint at one of those all in to do the football team on our final go. So the first, we're going to start out with a recap of the 2022 football season. This was in this past fall. So the team went 7-4, 4-3 in conference. And just a few stats. Obviously, the rosters can exceed over 70 people, so we're going to keep it to just some of the skill positions. And skill positions are running backs, quarterbacks, wide receivers, tight end will be included as well, wide receiver, and some of the defensive backs as well in the defense. We'll nail down as many players as we can in the time we have. So Westchester's points per game offensively was 25.00 points per game. To their opponents, they were giving up about 22.09 points per game, which is always good to obviously be over the mark that you're putting up. So if you're putting up 25 points and your opponents are putting up 26, 27, 28 points, you're looking to get that number down. But for Westchester this past year, they had a good season, 7-4. They only give up 22 points a game, a few tough losses in close games, and a few matchup problems. But it all worked out in the end, 7-4, and they'll have a strong roster next year. So as for rushing, so this is just first downs. They had 100 first downs rushing, 79 first downs passing. Obviously, that's very hard to see in the grand scale of 11-game season. But as you're seeing, 100 rushing first downs, that's a lot in 11 games. Yeah, that's almost 9 a game, which is pretty impressive. As for yards gained, so rushing, they had a total for the team, this is quite impressive right here. And this was led by Jaden McKenzie, who is a friend of mine. I went to school with him in middle school back in Springfield, Delaware County. Jaden has now moved on from the football team. He is now with Rhode Island University, which is a Division 1A program, which is an awesome opportunity for him. He put in amazing years at Westchester. With one more year of eligibility due to a COVID year, he was able to go to Rhode Island and really pursue that Division I dream he's had, and hopefully we'll get some NFL looks. And as crazy as that sounds, one of my good friends growing up, to see him, go from Westchester at our school. We're obviously huge supporters of Jaden, me and my friends, and to see him, now pursue his dream of being a Division I athlete and potentially have NFL scouts looking at him, it's really cool to watch. And we're obviously very proud of Jaden McKenzie. So as for yards gained as a team, it was 2,186 yards gained that season last year in the fall. Crazily impressive. 15 total touchdowns. And then as for passing, they averaged 168 passing yards a game, a total of 1,800. They were obviously more run heavy as a team. And they had 15 touchdowns passing. So 15 each, 15 passing touchdowns, 15 rushing touchdowns. And that was just a big story. That balancing the run and the pass is always a huge thing for professional football, college football, high school football. It's all about having a balance, and it ended up working out. So let's talk about some individual statistics. So as for Jaden McKenzie, that's obviously who I just mentioned. He averaged 4 yards a carry. He had 7 touchdowns of the 15 that Westchester had. He had a long of 49 yards, was his longest run. He had a total of 706 rushing yards, which led the Westchester football team. Jordan Cooper was another leading rusher with 510, and Phil Pokeek was also at 440, and they all shared rushing duties, and they all had their games. They were fantastic. Cooper Jordan, and Phil Pokeek, they both had 3 touchdowns each. So that's huge for them to be contributing 3 backs, and Jaden obviously leading the pack as a veteran senior back. And Jaden had 752 rushing yards. Again, very impressive. And then 177 attempts. So in 11 games Jaden played, he had 177 carries. You can imagine how that feels on your body and how taxing that can be. So as for game by game, we just look at last year's schedule. And they started off the season with a win against Bentley. It was 17-16 in a battle, came down to the wire. 17-16 win, 1-point win. Unfortunately played Slippery Rock, and Slippery Rock did end up beating them. It was 35-14 was the final. That was at home against Slippery Rock. They then played at Gannon University. They won 29-23. And then Millersville at home. A huge rivalry for Westchester in all sports. Obviously a big PSAC rivalry. And 26-14, Westchester pulled out the win. They then played at Bloomsburg, lost 21-16 in a nail-biter. Just a tough loss, and those are going to happen from time to time. And then they played Shippensburg at home. Another loss, unfortunately, 2013. All one-score games besides the Slippery Rock game. And it just sneak a few of those out. You make a playoff run, anything can happen. So obviously just a few tough losses. And then they went at East Stroudsburg. They won 24-21. They played Shepherd at home, took a loss, which was their worst loss of the season. It was 47-14. Shepherd really had their number that game, unfortunately. But then they finished out at 4-4. They finished out 3 straight wins. They played Lockhaven, 58-10 win. Huge win. Kutztown at Kutztown, 28-9 win. Excellent win against Kutztown. Kutztown's always a tough game. And then at Clarion, it was 36-27. So that's the football team. Now let's just talk about more of the individual components. And let's talk about the passing. So the leading passer for the team, and the games were split between Cooper Jordan, who also led the team, or was second in rushing for the team. He was a huge attribute there. And then Ethan Kohler, he was also the other quarterback that played 8 games. And Ethan had more passing attempts. So Ethan had 128 attempts. He completed 58 of those passes with a QB rating of 102. And he threw 5 interceptions, but he did have 4 touchdowns. He had a long pass of 50 yards. And he was averaging about 104 yards per game. And then they split these reps. They played Shane Dooley had 2 starts. Desmond Johnson as well, 5 games played on the year. Cooper Jordan, 9 games played. A lot of these guys were switching in and out, running like a dual threat type of thing. You know, a more heavy running quarterback, then a more heavy passing quarterback. But Cooper Jordan, he was excellent. Completed 54% of his passes, 42 of 78. Just one interception, 8 passing touchdowns, 713 yards. He was phenomenal. And then Shane Dooley, he was 16 of 35. He had 2 touchdowns himself. And then Desmond Johnson also got some playing time in a game, in 5 different games, and had a touchdown as well. So that's is how I wanted to end this podcast, Around the Arena. Episode 8, I wanted to do the football team. I was a huge follower of all sports when I first got to Westchester, but the two sports that stuck with me the most, obviously with being on the baseball team as a freshman, I was very invested in the baseball team, and that was evident. And then obviously having my friend Jaden McKenzie and also my friend Joe Kennedy at the time being on the football team, I was all in. I loved watching. I loved going to games. I loved being invested in, how they were doing at practice, what their schedule was. And it was cool. We would go to the dining hall, Jaden and Joe Kennedy and a few of my other buddies, and we would just get to hear, all the hard work they're putting in. And it's, we're getting up at 5:30. Oh, we have a lift here, and then we have practice after that, and then we have a team meeting. And then I'm like, wow. I mean, it is pretty dang impressive what these student athletes are doing. And some sports are a little more taxing than others. I know the baseball team wasn't at the level of the football team. I'm not sure as for what other sports entail, but it was really impressive to hear, a few of my friends being able to firsthand be a part of the football team and go through years of playing for the football team, being involved heavily, and then Jaden obviously being one of the stars in the PSAC and Division II in general, just as a running back, and then to be able to move up to the Division I level for his final year of eligibility, being able to, get NFL looks and all of that. It's just really impressive. It's really cool to watch. And it's something where, me and Jaden we played youth football together. I was the quarterback back when we were very young, 12 years old or so. And he was the running back. He was the linebacker. He was just a freak athlete all around the field. All the parents knew who he was. All the other teams knew who he was. He was always a stud. And to see him be able to, grow as a player, a person, and possibly have the opportunity to play in the NFL one day, it's been awesome to watch. And that's a Westchester Ram. That's one of us. That's someone that we'll all be able to support, if he gets drafted one day or if he makes it to the practice squad for an NFL team. And it's just something to really look forward to. Definitely keep an eye out for Jaden McKenzie. Definitely. But that's going to wrap it up for our final episode of Around the Arena. Can't believe it. Eight episodes. This is my first time, like I said, doing a podcast. I wasn't used to the editing part. I wasn't used to a lot of stuff. I got out of my comfort zone and was able to really, enjoy putting together a product, building almost a brand to Around the Arena. When I was first coming up with the name, couldn't find a name, and I said Around the Arena. It sounded all right at the time. Kind of just went with it. It was just a lot of brainstorming, went with it. And then, as the time goes on, I feel like this is my brand, Around the Arena. I would love to continue this at another level. If there's individuals that want to continue this in a future course and run Around the Arena, that's more than okay with me. And I'd love for them to do that. And it's just been a great experience. So I just thank you all for listening. Those who you have peeked at this or, listened. I know it's not going to be the most popular thing. And, some people aren't too interested in sports or whatnot and don't know what this is all about. But for anybody who has listened, I do appreciate it. It was fun doing it. And this is a learning lesson for me, just going forward with, what I want to do with my occupation. And I appreciate having this platform at Westchester University to be able to expose myself as a passionate sports fan for the first time. I'm very quiet with my sports knowledge, and to be able to just put everything into a podcast, talk about these teams, it was a pleasure. And I thank you all for listening. I'm going to check out. This is it. Around the Arena has wrapped it up. So thank you all for listening. I really appreciate it. Episode 8 is under wraps. And thanks again. This is Around the Arena, and I am Zachary Kennedy. Thank you.